You're tuned into 9 to 5 Work Rebels with your host, Ebony Gale. This podcast is sponsored by the PRCA's Race, Ethnicity and Equity Board. Visit prca.org.uk/REEB to find out more.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Gems in Comms series special, brought to you by 9 to 5 Work Rebels podcast. I am your host, Ebony Gale, and today I'm really excited to be speaking with Charlotte Stavrou, who is the founder and CEO of SevenSix Agency, which is an award-winning influencer agency for inclusive, creator-driven campaigns. So we're going to be hearing all about her journey today. So welcome, Charlotte.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You are most welcome. And just as a bit of a background, the reason why I had this podcast or this particular series special is all about giving people of color who work in PR and communications, you know, their flowers for carving out a great career for themselves, because we know it is particularly a predominantly white industry. So it's great to acknowledge those who are doing some great work for themselves. So well done to you.
Thank you so much. I'm really, really excited to dig deep into the conversation because we're coming to the end of the year. So I feel like some gems are about to be thrown about.
That's good. We always like some gems, and this is what it's about. Gems in comms. So let's get to it, okay? So can we start off with you telling us about yourself, like what you do, and have you always wanted to work in communications and PR?
So I am a long time influencer and social media marketer. I feel like it's actually all I've ever done. So I started my career in social media marketing, a mixture of kind of internships, some freelance work, like a job that I call an apprenticeship just because it was paid so little, but I learned so much. Okay. And then went in like in-house corporate side for social media, which then led, as time went on, led to digital marketing and then influencer marketing. And I was in-house until 2018. I worked for a mixture of different industries, starting in the graphic design industry, then into e-learning. Then I moved into licensing, where I headed the Hello Kitty brand for the Sanrio EMEA markets, which was really fun. And that's where my influence marketing really kicked in, because we really had to figure out how to extend a budget, and influencers were just starting to be a thing. This was 2018. So influence marketing has been around since about 2008 in the UK, but it's changed so much into what we know it now. Yeah. And in 2018, it was definitely having a big moment. And that's when I was given the freedom to kind of do whatever I want at Sanrio, and I did, and had some incredible partnerships in place. And then I moved to War Nails, which no longer exists, but it was Charmadine Reed. It was her first beauty venture. It was a nail salon based in London. It had 2 locations, but we went with them when they were in Soho. Excuse my rambling today because I am not feeling the best, so I feel like my brain's going to be a little bit slow.
But I do remember her name, and I remember the nails, the brand. I do remember. Yeah.
Well, no, that was honestly one of the most exciting moments of my life when I was called in to interview with them, and I was like, oh my goodness, because Charmadine is, and at the time was, like the holy grail for all things kind of Black women on the internet, Black women in business. She was so exciting. So I was there for a short stint and learned so much. And then off the back of that, went freelance and then built SevenSix as a business. But throughout that entire journey, I was a marketer and marketing consumer goods. But on the other side, I was also an influencer. So from 2010, I had a blog, a YouTube, and then later an Instagram account, which I used to generate income. And I was going to Fashion Week and writing blogs about events, and when things were very different in 2010 compared to now, but there wasn't much money being thrown around. But there was lots of fun experiences, lots of really cool product launches and PR experiences that existed. So I was very much in the marketing world in my job, but then in my life, that's when I went into like the PR world, because I didn't really know what PR was. I knew what marketing was, because marketing is quite corporate in the sense that it's like digital services. It's kind of techie. Whereas PR is more community focused, and you meet people and you chat and it's about your personality. So I was on the receiving end of the PR side as an influencer, and loved it. So when I was able to combine my marketing skills with that kind of personality type role, which I think is PR, definitely part of PR, I was loving life. And then when I went freelance, that's really what I focused on. And then I launched SevenSix in 2019 as an influencer marketing agency, and the focus was around creating inclusive campaigns, working with brands to help them understand that there were creators out there that didn't look like the people that they were necessarily booking. Because when I was thinking about the business in 2018, before I launched, the big issue was that there were lots of influencers and people online with large followings who were from ethnic minority backgrounds or niche communities, whatever it might be, but they weren't working with brands because brands didn't know that the majority of them existed. So my aim was to connect these creators with brands, which for me felt quite normal, because the creators that I was thinking about were mainly my friends. Majority of my friends come from minority backgrounds, be that an ethnic minority or they're from the LGBTQI community or whatever it might be. I knew really great creators and I wanted brands to work with them. So that's where I started. Roll on almost 5 years, every 5 years in February. And we have grown into a much bigger business. We now have 7 employees. We work across different parts of the influencer space, from talent management to campaign management to community building and education. I do a lot of talks around driving diversity and inclusion within your business and also within your campaigns, creating inclusive marketing strategies and things like that. So we've grown into something that I never realized we could even be. And yeah, I'd like to say I'm riding the wave, but in 2023, I'm very much strategically planning my ride.
Yeah, no, it's good. It sounds really good, and you've done some really good work. And to think about, your transition, doing the marketing, getting into the influencer side, and then seeing the PR side and how that kind of all comes together, and then setting up your own thing. It's amazing. It's really, really good. Well done to you. And such an important space. Such an important space, because you're so correct. There was, influencers that were getting used with brands were mostly the white people, ones that you knew quite well of, your Zoellas, those that were really out there. But there were other people out there that were just as amazing, doing some, great reach. So it's great that you were part of that, movement to connect them. And that's what you kind of focus on. So I think that's brilliant. And that is really, really cool, really interesting. And what kind of attracted you to sort of the marketing comms industry?
I think I've always been obsessed with social media. When I was younger, I was obsessed with MSN. I was obsessed with chat rooms and like Habba Hotel and like Sims and anything like, I don't know, like online social. And I think it was because I was maybe trying to find my own community, because I didn't feel like I had exactly what I needed, maybe when I was younger. And then MySpace came along and I was utterly obsessed, to the point where I refused to get Facebook, because I was like, why would I get Facebook when MySpace exists? And my friend had to make my Facebook page for me before I went to uni, because she was like, we won't communicate if you don't have Facebook.
Don't have it.
And then I started using Facebook, and then I became obsessed with Facebook. And I just love new social platforms, and I love imagery. I love content. I really do love content. I love consuming content. I love making content. And yeah, that's how I got into it. And then because I have always been interested in it, I have always just done it. So doing things freelance for family friends or events that are coming up, or joining a business. And then like one of my first jobs, I joined as an admin assistant, and then they were like, we had this team meeting and our Twitter was awful. And I didn't realize that the person that did Twitter was in the room. I thought they were in the States. And I was like, someone said something, and I was like, because our Twitter's rubbish. Why would anyone follow us? Da, da, da. And then the person was like, oh, do you think you can do a better job? And I was like, yeah, I could actually. And then she was like, oh, well, you do it then. And I was like, oh, wait, did you do it? Sorry, I didn't mean to be so outspoken. And then I was like, oh, sorry. And then I did. And then off the back of that, rose to become the marketing manager of that company within a couple of years, because I had a real interest in it. It's something that I really wanted to kind of show off, but then also figure out how it worked. That was an e-learning, and the e-learning is very different to my general interest, although I am a really big fan of education in general and like learning. But I had to figure out how that works for the e-learning world, which isn't as like stuffy or like cool as you would think it is. Actually, it's actually quite a fun place to work. And then and it just continued, and wherever I went, I was just like, oh, let me try that, let me do that. And then people just let me.
That's brilliant. But it also shows that's your passion, and you were going with your passion, which you know is what led you to where you are, really. So that's really cool. I like that. And you said that you like creating content and consuming it. I'm like that. I love consuming content, and I do create content as well. So I get it. I think that's cool. But it's hilarious that you were anti-Facebook. That's dark.
Look at me now.
Like, I'm down with MySpace. I'm not moving. But I mean, you have to look how many platforms come out now. It's like, my gosh, like there's always new something popping up, isn't there? So it's really interesting. All right, so we're going to get a bit deeper now into sort of like your experiences growing up and stuff like that. So, for example, one of the questions I always ask all of my people that come on here is, when did you become aware of your ethnicity? And that's not to say that, you know, you don't know who you are and the skin you're in. Like, I know I'm a Black woman, but I know that as a young person growing up, when I was 11 years old, there was a particular incident that happened where I started to hear about Chelsea Smilers. Chelsea Smilers were basically a group of racist white thugs that would go up to any Black or brown person and would get a razor and cut you across your face. That was called the Chelsea Smile. And I remember going into an area for school that was kind of known to be racist. So I was 11 years old, started secondary school, and then hearing about this. So also was very much had me on my toes, but also very aware. And it was very much a sobering moment, you know, of, oh my God, like, you know about racism, but this is in my own bubble, essentially. Is there any moments like that you had? Well, maybe not, which is a good thing.
No, I haven't. But the Chelsea Smiler thing, I used to have nightmares. I heard about it when I was young, and then I couldn't until recently. I haven't stopped thinking about it. It just pops up in my mind every now and again. So that is not a nice memory. But no, I don't. My parents were really good at raising. I think, in my opinion, yes, raising me and my siblings to know who we are. So I'm mixed race. My dad is Black, British Jamaican. He was born in the UK. His mum came over, my grandma came over in the 60s. And my mum is English, and we've done the family tree, and that's as far we can only go far back as England. But my parents are both from West London, and my mum has a really large Jamaican side in her family, because my English grandma's sister married a Jamaican man. So I've got lots of mixed race cousins. And on my dad's side, we are Jamaican, and on my mum's side, we have a really large Jamaican community and family. So I've always known, no matter which part of the family I go to, that I'm Jamaican. And our families are very different. So as in like my mum's family and my dad's family, they're both quite different. So I was able to see different types of Jamaican culture through the differences in who they are. And my mum and dad moved to Hertfordshire when just before I was born, because they basically couldn't afford to buy a house in London, and they wanted to buy a house. So they moved to Hertfordshire, and they bought a tiny little house. And then as time went on, they bought something bigger because there were four of us, or four kids. But I think they were really aware that we were at the time one of the few Black families in the area.
Yeah.
But luckily, actually, in our first house, our next door neighbors were Black,
Okay.
and like really community focused and like amazing to this day. Like my sister's planning her wedding at the moment. To this day, some of that family are being invited to that wedding, and I moved out of that house when I was like 6.
Yeah.
So we're still friends with that family. But I guess in towns where you don't have many people like you do tend to come together. But yeah, you definitely attract. So my parents were really good at that. And my mum was also a childminder when I was younger, and she attracted all the Black families because she had Black mixed kids, so she knew how different cultures work. So we had loads of kids at home, and a lot of them were, if not Black, were people of color. So my parents just attracted the communities. So I was always really aware of who I was because my parents really embedded that into us. And I really, really love, my mum is white and English and from a very specific generation. And I'm sure she can definitely say things that are sometimes you're like, whoa, lady, we don't say that. But not so much now, after BLM resurgence, we've had like deep conversations, but before. But she did a great job at raising her kids to know who they are. And I am really grateful for that. So I never had a moment where I didn't know who I was, because my dad is a DJ and really into music, and Black culture for us, if we couldn't see it where we lived, was in our home. So we always had music, we always had like news from the States, we always had stuff going on that we just knew everything that was happening on a global level, because my dad was just tuned in.
It's important. And that's what when I say that, I don't mean like you don't know who you are in that sense.
No, but a lot of people don't. A lot of people
don't grow up with that.
Have said like, oh, I didn't know. Oh, on the other side, like you could be a Black person and not ever think about being Black because it's never come up, because it never had to, because you were raised in a space where everyone looked like you. That could also be but I didn't have that. I wasn't raised in a space where people looked like me, but I was aware that I was different. But my parents made it feel like my difference was really good.
Yeah, they should.
Also, my mum raised me to think that my differences made me slightly better. So she gave me this thing. So if anyone ever said
confidence, anything, which is nice though. That's good confidence to have.
If anyone ever said anything, I'd be like, what do you mean? Like I remember having, I don't know if you ever had that braid, like to this day I'm like, why would you give me that? But it's the braid that you get when you're getting a wig sewn in. So it's the round the world. Yeah. So I had that as a kid. My aunt just loved that style. So that was a regular, and I don't remember actually liking it, but
it's usually a weave, isn't it? So they can tap it in quite right.
I had no weave, so I don't know what was going on there. But my aunt
just loved the hairstyle. Fine.
She used to do my hair every now and again. I remember someone being like, what is that? And I'd be like, listen, my aunt said it was cool, so it must be cool. And you don't know because you're not from my world. So I was just a bit like, what do you know? And then one time someone said my hair was like candy floss. And in their defense, when my hair wasn't braided, it wasn't in a good state. It was always like frizzy. I was that typical, like, even though my mum knew very well how to do my hair, a lot of the times I was that typical mixed race girl with the fluffy hair at the front because they weren't using the right gel or whatever, because there just wasn't actually good products for our hair at that time. But I remember being like, what are you talking about? But then going home and being like, they're not wrong though. My hair does look like candy floss. So I had a confidence in me that was instilled by my parents, which I carry with me to this day. We all think we're unstoppable.
I think that's great. I think that's good that you've had the experiences where you were, surrounded by lots of different cultures. Because I definitely grew up in multicultural, definitely knew my Black background and my family. My people are from Jamaica. So I really, was quite entrenched in that. I suppose the difference is this dealing with the racism of the outside world and being more aware of that, because I was in my bubble. Even though I was going to school with kids that were, white, Indian, all different races, it was going into that area, which I knew was to be a racist area, and then having that story told to me was just a bit like, okay, obviously you knew about things happening, knew about racism, but this is almost on your doorstep. So it was more that. And I suppose you're lucky because you're in Hertfordshire and you still had quite a multicultural background.
Yeah.
You didn't
Although
have
there were parts of where I lived that had some, like there were places that you could
behavior.
go. Yeah, like you couldn't walk into. It's different now. But yeah, it was a different time. And also I definitely have some trauma from things that maybe were said to me as a kid that I definitely bring up in therapy.
Okay, that's what I suppose I was going for more, because I remember there's like a one of the girls I interviewed the other day was saying that she had stuff going on at school, like a schoolgirl refused to play with her because her mum told her she can't play with black kids. And then another one who was mixed race actually, and she was talking about how she's quite fair when it's winter, and she remembers going to a school's girl's friend's house, and the friend basically said, basically whispered to the other friend, came back to her and was like, basically, you've got to leave because I just realised that you're mixed. You're not supposed to be in my house.
Just realised.
Yeah.
No, I luckily didn't have any of that, but I did have more things of like boys being like, oh, no, not a big deal, but I don't date black girls, or like, you get it, don't you? And I'd be like, yeah, sure, there's only white boys in this school, but cool, I just wouldn't date anyone for my entire life, and then have to go out of school to find a boyfriend.
I get that. I've heard that as well. Definitely that kiss chase. Boys might not want to run after you because you're the black girl, you're the mixed race girl. So I've definitely heard stories like that as well, for sure.
Yeah, I think school was weird. I don't think I was quite lucky to have a quite diverse primary school, but secondary school not as much.
Okay, interesting indeed. So have you ever felt like your race or ethnicity has kind of held you back in your career at any point in time?
Yeah, there was definitely one job that I know for a fact that, as much as I loved it, I basically some numbers got leaked, and the numbers basically showed that everyone that didn't get a pay rise was a person of color, which was quite a lot of people. And that was like the only time that I've been like, wow, that's really bum out. But I left and moved somewhere else and then got paid correctly. But now in my current job, I struggle to know if it's there's so many things that could be a factor as to why I don't, get the things I want to get. I don't know. It could be my race. It could be my gender. I work in the advertising industry and it's very male dominated. I think PR, there's lots of women-owned PR agencies, but influencer marketing is very male, which is very odd because the percentage of influencers who are women are so much higher than men. I think it's like 77% or...
I'm just thinking that when you were saying that, thinking about, isn't there more women influencers? But yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. But the majority of the agencies are owned by men. I also look a lot younger than I actually am, which is nice, but it also means that I don't think I'm taken as seriously as I should be. And that's from many different people, sometimes even creators who think that I'm like an assistant on the job rather than the founder and the person that's making the decisions, which can always be interesting because it means that I can kind of be a bit of a spy sometimes. But I think a mixture of ethnicity, gender, and perceived age definitely will fall into some of my problem areas.
I can understand that. I feel like that's understandable. I get that. And have you experienced or witnessed racism in the workplace? And if so, how was it handled? I know you mentioned the pay gap situation because that's definitely something you would have noticed. But you obviously did the right thing. You moved on, got yourself a job that paid you well. So, well done to you. So that you handled that one very well.
Yeah, no, I haven't. I've been really, really blessed. And I think it's because I just never really thought about, I just go with my gut a lot. And I've never really thought about things seriously, I think. So my first job, it was a really small business, and there were 4 of us,
Mm-hmm.
and that was really easy. And I was just the youngest. I was essentially an intern. It was lovely. And then I moved to my e-learning company, which was the most diverse company I've ever come across. Every race, anything you can think of was there. I don't know how they hired so well. And I talk about the founder of the agency, founder of the company. His name's Matthew Lloyd. I talk about him a lot in interviews because it blows my mind how he created or how he has, because he's still, the business exists and it's doing really well, but how he created such an inclusive environment. And he is a white man from Manchester. He does come from a working class background, and he's kind of like built himself up, and he is now a very wealthy man. So he will have a viewpoint that maybe might be different to other people. Social mobility is a really big thing for him, but I don't understand how he nailed it so well. I met 2 of my best friends in that company, and we still talk about the company now. Like it's just fantastic.
That's wonderful.
Yeah,
so like he's got it right. He sounds like he's got it right in terms of, I suppose, also being passionate about social mobility. You'll want to make sure you are bringing the right people and putting the right people in place.
Yeah.
So that would be his passion driver. But that's great that was one of the most diverse companies you worked with. I think that's that's positive as well. I think that's great. And question you probably haven't then, I was going to say, is there ever a time when you wish you spoke up about something, or when you did maybe speak up, self-advocate or advocate on somebody else's behalf that you might have felt was being maybe,
No, I'm very vocal at work, and I always have been. So when I don't think things are right, I have always spoken up for those people, and also educated people. But again, I haven't had to do too much of that. There's been every now and again an employee of a business where you're like, this is not okay. I had one instance at one of the companies I work for that it was amazing, but there was this one guy that I managed, and he just did not respect me, and he refused to, and I don't know if it was because I was a little bit younger than him. I think it was like 2 years younger than him. If I was a woman, if it was because I was Black. I heard he got fired from one of his next jobs because he's a copywriter, and he wrote something that was perceived as racist towards Hispanic people.
Interesting. Well, that could be a bit your sign as to why he didn't like you.
Yeah, but I honestly don't think that is why. I just think he had a bit of a power issue. I think it might have been everything, but I think
it sounds like an accumulation. It could be a case of you're younger. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're mixed. It's
There's
like
so many
a woman.
He really did not like being managed by me, and I found it really hard. I remember speaking to my boss about it, and she was just like, deal with it. And I was like, oh. And she was like, I'm going to teach you this lesson now. You're young. You have excelled quicker than most people in your in terms of your timeline in your career, and you are going to struggle with this for your entire career. You need to figure out how to make him respect you. I can't teach you that. You have to find your way of getting like the common ground. Obviously I'll jump in if things get bad, but like this is your moment to figure it out. I remember being in the car basically like crying down the phone to her, being like, I need you to fix it. And she was like, no, you can fix it. And it really empowered me, because she was basically she's actually now a life coach, which tells you everything. But I imagine she's brilliant. But she was just like, you need to sort this out yourself. Like, I'm not your mum. You are at work and you're a grown up. Because I was only like 24.
Yeah, that's still a lot still. But I get it. But I get what she was doing. She was literally just saying you have to manage it. You nothing else you can do in this situation. Yeah. But it's also a growth journey, right? So you were able to, you're going to have to get him to get it done. And that's been quite hard for you as well, though.
Yeah, it was hard, but we fixed it. He did get fired in the end. But for that time that I worked with him, he sorted himself out. But yeah, that's the only time I've really had to. And I've had a few ins and outs with people where I've had to like educate them to be like, we don't say this, but it was all very innocent.
Yeah.
There's times where I think especially as a person of color, most of the time when someone, I think as a British person as well, when someone's made a mistake, because culturally we're wild, like things that have been said in our lifetime that have now changed, and how our terminologies and things like that, they've changed massively over time. Like until I don't even know when the switch was, but I was referred to as half caste for a lot of my life. That wasn't seen.
That was a term used by a lot of people. It wouldn't see there's anything wrong. A lot of people use that, and now it's understood that it's actually offensive. But yeah, I grew up hearing that.
Now we're like, oh, wait, we can't say that. But I don't remember when that shift happened. But I just thought that, I don't know if I ever called myself it. I don't know. But I remember that was just like the normal thing to say.
It was. Yeah, I remember.
But we learned that now it isn't. So there's been times where I've had to say, we don't say these things anymore, and this is why. And then as soon as I've said that and educated people, have been like, oh, I didn't realize, okay, and then nipped it in the bud. But I've luckily never had an issue where there's been any like bad things happen, and I feel really grateful for the jobs and the bosses and the managers that I've had over my career, because listening to other people's stories, that's just not the case.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for sharing that. So I want to get your thoughts on code switching. Now, do you feel like people of color can leave without authentic voices in the workplace, or will we be forever code switching?
It depends where you work.
Yes.
I think we will always have to code switch. It's just, culture's a culture, right? So if you don't understand my culture, then you will not be able to communicate with me in the way that I'm communicating with you, essentially. So as an example, my husband is Greek Cypriot.
Okay.
So his culture is quite different, and I'm having to like learn that. And he is from London, but maybe hasn't met necessarily a family like mine who come from like deep west, and we even though I grew up in Hertfordshire, but my family, and we're like, I don't know what the phrase is, like salt of the earth, kind of like that, real, like the English side's like real, like
to work.
Cockney, that kind of vibe. And then my Jamaican side is quite different. It's a bit more it's very different actually. And he's come into my home, my family home, and been like, whoa. So what I imagine, I just always use him as my example of like that code switch, how I talk to my parents and my friends, and that, and then I'll go to his house and speak to his parents. That's completely different.
Right?
I'm still being my authentic self, but I do have to change slightly how I speak, or the types of words I use, because they won't understand me.
Yeah. No,
and that's just it. And I think in the workplace, that's gonna happen. We don't have that in my workplace, because we're quite small. There's only 7 of us, and we're all from completely different backgrounds, and we're just like building our own culture. So there's no code switching. We just like say whatever, and then if we don't get it, someone will just teach you. So we've got a Kenyan person who's non-binary that is constantly teaching us different things. We've got someone who's Arab, someone who's Indian, and also Greek Cypriot. We've got me and my sister, because we work together, who are British, Jamaican, mixed heritage. We've got an English girl who's like alternative, and she's like from this like goth punk world that's like completely, like everyone is so different. So we're just coming together and just hoping that we understand each other. And a lot of them are like Gen Z and speak a very different language to what I speak. And I'm a little bit older, and speak my own like millennial chat, and we just make it work. But in a normal corporate job, I don't like, I always sit there and think, if you were working for like a big agency, there is no way that you could be this person. And it makes me really sad, because when they do go on to leave, and I'm sure wherever they go, the track record is, if you leave 7-6, you tend to go somewhere really good, which I really love. But I hope that they can be their authentic selves, but I don't think that might necessarily be true.
Yeah, I hear you. I think that's, your answer is quite right for me. I resonate with that, because I do feel like it is a case of where you are, like what kind of environment you go into, and whether that environment allows for you to be your true self. But also your true self has different layers. So the layer that you might deal with at home and with your sisters or with the Jamaican side will be different to when you go to, like you said, your husband's side, where it's Greek, so it's a bit different culture, but you're still yourself. But you might, miss out certain words or certain things that you might not with your...
How you speak to your grandma will be different to how you speak to your parents, to your siblings. There's a excuse me, there's a chain, like you just change slightly, but you're still the same person. But I think in the corporate world, sometimes you have to be a completely different person. And that I could never be.
Yeah, I get that, because I've done corporate work, and I definitely get the feeling that it was very much, you have to be sharp in a certain way. Whereas I feel like, I work for myself now, so obviously I don't really have those type of boundaries as such, but which is nice, which is what I prefer. But again, it depends on what you like. So moving on to the color bias within the industry. When did you become aware of the color bias within the sort of PR comms and marketing? I think because marketing is kind of similar as well. Industry. When did you become aware of it being majority white? Was it something that you always already knew? For me, I really saw it when I started going to a lot of the networking events and being more involved in the industry, and then looking across and thinking, oh my gosh, like it really is really, really quite white. And I also got put on the Women in PR board. So I remember going to a lot of Women in PR UK meetings and looking across and being like, wow, there's just a sea of white people. And it was literally spot the brown face almost, do you know what I mean? And obviously seeing the industry talks and things like that, but that's when I became aware. What about you?
This podcast is sponsored by the PRCA's Race, Ethnicity and Equity Board. Visit prca.org.uk/REEB to find out more.
The same. So I worked in-house for my whole career, so I didn't know what it looked like agency side.
Yeah.
And then when I launched the agency, I started going to conferences, and I started doing a lot of networking, and I still do now. And I was just like, whoa, there's so many white people. This is crazy. I just didn't realize that the imbalance was so heavy. And I say imbalance because if we look at our like we're in London, if we look at the census and like how many people of color, not just black people, but people of color there are in London, and then how many people of color there are in the industry, like it doesn't make any sense. And like how are you not finding people to fill the jobs? Like it feels like you have to actively not look for people of color to be able to not have people of color. Because someone actually said to me, I went to a conference last week, and I was just talking about HR and stuff to someone, and this guy just like interrupted and was like, oh, sorry to interrupt, but I hear you're talking about HR, and he talked about a software that he uses, and I was like, oh, that sounds great, whatever. And then we're talking about hiring and stuff, and then he was like, oh, we're a small team of 7 or 8, I can't remember how many he said, but we're all white, white people, quite middle class, and we're really struggling to find people of color to hire. How do you go about it? And I was like, in all honesty, I struggle to find white people. It's what you're attracting. That's what you're attracting.
This is what you're like, I struggle to find white people. I'm like, this is interesting. Yeah, carry on.
No, I'm not. Well, I think that's a bit of an exaggeration, because we have all different types of people that apply for jobs, which is great. But I was just like, the majority of like the large percentage of people that apply for a role at 7-6 will be normally a black woman or a black mixed race woman, or a person of color in general. That's like the second, and then after that, it'll be a white person. But it's because that's who we attract based on the staff that we have, and me, and I do lots of talks, and people can maybe see themselves in me and want to apply for a job. But if they don't have that, then they're probably not attracting anyone. But it's like, what does your job board look like? Like, what does your website look like? Can they see themselves working for your company? One of our clients said this years ago, and I was like, yeah, because going on your social media and your website, it looks like you only employ white people. So why would I want to work with you when it doesn't look like you're open to me working there? We don't want to be the one person. Like, there's nothing worse than being
be the one,
the only person.
I've been there.
Be that the one woman, the one person of color, the one, state school educated, the one from a working class background, the one, like, whatever the one is, being that one is the worst.
It can be. I mean, you can be in a company where you're like, I've been in lots of teams where it's been great. People I work with are lovely, but I still notice that there's nobody else that looks like me, or that I can't necessarily banter with in a certain way because they might not get it. And so, yeah, it's not ideal. Even me being the first Black woman to be appointed to the Women in PR board, like the committee, I was the first Black woman. I'm like, how is it?
That's amazing, by the way.
Well, thank you. But it's also quite a bit like, well, there's Black women that have been out here. Like, why is it taking you so long? I was the first Black woman, and Sarah Sammy was the first Mauritian. So we were the two people of color that were on the board. But then, tokenistic stuff can still happen. I remember going to an annual meeting, and the old president asking myself and Sarah, the only two people of color in the team, what we had done to improve more ethnic minority women joining the board. So it's like, it became an us problem, did it? Because we're the only people with melanated skin. So that can be a problem when you're just the only one and you get lumped with things. But I think if you're conscious and you're cognizant and aware that actually this person has her own feelings and maybe want to try and attract more people the right way, then that's different. But I think it's interesting you said that the guy said he didn't know where to look, because I find that we do hear that. And I don't understand why, because there are things out there. There's a UK Black Comms Network. There's different things, other initiatives that you can look at. How about you go look on LinkedIn and look for people? You can do it.
Google.
Yeah, Google. There's LinkedIn. Like LinkedIn, you can just look at people's titles and see people of color everywhere. So I feel like it's a bit of an excuse, but I also feel like there's a bit of replacing like for like in the industry, and they've done that quite a lot. Because I remember working with a recruiter before, an exec recruiter, and she was saying, the CEO was always saying to me, well, sometimes we get asked by clients, red brick universities only. And it's like, well, yeah, but people of color do go to red brick universities too, but that doesn't mean it's just
red brick.
Go there. Some people of color still go there, but either way, maybe you should be pushing back on them and saying, well, actually, you need to open it up a bit more. I think there's a bit of push from the executive search firms, push from the actual recruiters as well in terms of opening that up a bit. I tell you who's quite good at that, Jo at Ketchum. I remember having a chat with her, and she instructs her HR people to find people of color and make sure that they're in the mix. And I think that's important.
I saw her last week. I went to the PR Moment PR masterclasses. It was the Agency Growth Forum, which was a really good day. My only criticism was looking around the room. I put it in the Black Comms Network.
I saw that.
But I think the only Black people that were there were from UK Black Comms, which is an issue, but not necessarily an issue from the organisers, but an issue from the businesses that were sending their staff. I don't know. I don't know how it works, but Jo did a talk about D&I, and I found it very, very interesting because Ketchum are a great agency. I actually really like Ketchum. We've worked with them a few times. And recently Vic Kagram from Ketchum was on our Black History Month judging panel for spotlighting creators. And I've got a lot of time for him and a lot of time for them. But I didn't really know much about their story and like the ins and outs. And hearing Jo speak about how they see D&I and how they do it, I was like, yeah, I'm into this.
Yeah, they're good. She's made definitely, I feel like she's made good strides in that area, and you can see that she's definitely committed to it. And she's made it, I like that she puts, onus on the HR people, make sure you find people of color. There's no excuses. So I really like that. And I feel like a lot more agencies could be doing that. But
notice she comes from a minority background. So she's like super working class from Glasgow.
Working class.
It normally takes someone who has that different lens to be able to do that. Like my old boss, Matthew, who comes from a working class family from Manchester, like, note that is generally the thing. It's normally someone from, you might not be if you're not a person of color, it'll be a class difference. They might be, a gay guy. It might be just something that makes them slightly different to the social norm within the culture of advertising or PR, and that will then give them a completely different lens, which I find really interesting, because it's like as soon as you're out of the I don't know, the circle, you can see things in like a completely different way. So it's like, how do you then make people within the circle see that viewpoint? So is it that you need more friends who are from minority backgrounds, or do you need to educate yourself more? Do you need to be watching more movies? I don't know what it is, but like, how can you like understand our lens by not walking in our shoes?
Yeah, I think that there's an element of self-education that needs to be done, and self-learning. And people can do that. There's books out there, there's things out there that with people have, put their heart out into to share, like, why I'm no longer talking to white people. There's books, there's things, there's ways to educate yourself with tools. So I feel like it's up to them. I feel like there's, I feel like a lot of that gets put on people of color, like we have to be the ones to teach you and to show you. And it's like, well, no, actually, as a Black woman myself, I speak for myself, whereas actually going through life in our day-to-day can be traumatic as it is. I don't want to have to turn around and then having to educate you. I can look across my timeline and see a Black man being attacked. That's not something that happens to them on a daily basis. So I feel like we're coming from it from different angles, but I feel like having empathy should be a basic human skill. And I feel like being able to try and empathize and try to identify with people should be something that you do, particularly if you're working in this field, where your aim is to create stories and to engage people. So the people you're engaging look like myself, look like other ethnic minorities, but yet when you're usually looking around the table, that's not always reflected. So I feel like that's also important for people to realize. But I do feel like they are making some good headway in the industry as well. There is some good things happening. But again, like you said, you was at an event last week and you're still looking around thinking, okay, it's still a bit sparse in here. So there's still a lot more to be done. But interesting, you said that you literally came aware of it like me when you went through networking. So cool. Okay, so what are your thoughts on allyship and what does it mean to you? What's an example of good allyship in your mind?
Allyship. I think allyship is really important, because no one can fight the fight alone. And I think good allyship is, so I have a lot of allies in the industry, and I'm really grateful for the people that I meet and the real connections that we have. And I think I had to put a lot of work in to ensure that I had a really good network outside of, because I think as a female founder, as a Black female founder, I think it's really it would have been really easy for me to just find other Black women to speak to. Unfortunately for me, there aren't that many Black women.
I'm going to say that in the industry, it depends what you're looking at, and you're going to need
founder wise.
Yeah,
there aren't many founders of influence marketing agencies who are Black.
I agree.
Literally a handful. So it was difficult to do that. Anyway, so I've made some really great friendships over the years with other founders who really go out of their way to support me, and I'm really grateful for that. And that looks like introductions. That looks like thinking about me or the business when they can't fulfill a brief, but they know that we could do it. It looks like knowing what we're good at. So things like writing reports and looking at data and turning it into something that's educational, and sharing their data with us to walk with us on whatever journey. Yeah, it just looks like showing up if a favor on both sides, but if if we need a favor for anything, knowing that those people will be there. And I think allyship is so important, especially for businesses like mine, where I don't belong really in this industry. If I look specifically in influencer marketing, which is so different from PR agencies, there are so many women-owned agencies. I know loads, but influencer marketing specifically, which is more a digital form of PR and very niche, there are hardly any women. There's like 5, not talent management, but influencer management, like influencer marketing agencies. There's like 5 women-owned, 10 at a push, depending on the scale that you wanna talk about. But that's not a lot.
Yeah.
And then also, if we want to change that to Black women-owned, it's even fewer. So we need to be supported and we need to be considered. And me, as an example, I had zero experience in running a business. And honestly I talk about this a lot in interviews, but had no idea what I was doing when I first launched. I just knew what I wanted to do and I had to figure out how to get there. And I'm very much in a good place now, but I say that I'm nearly 5 years into the journey, and I say for like at least 3 years, maybe 3.5, I felt like I was doing like a really long like MBA, and that I was just learning, trying things out. The business was running, we were doing good things, but like behind the scenes there was a lot going on that I was like, well, this isn't quite, I'm sure this isn't how businesses should run. And now looking back, no, it wasn't. And I've learned so much, and I've done so much work that I've been able to get to a really good place. But I can get there because I was able to ask lots of people lots of questions, people giving me their time. And at the beginning, I didn't feel confident to ask people because I felt like I should just know it, because there's just an assumption that you run a business, you should just know. But last year, I made a big point to go out for lunches and dinners and coffees with other agency owners and just be like, can I ask you an embarrassing question? How does this work? What does this mean? Like, and they're like, oh, you're quite late into your journey to not know what that means. I'm like, yep, I know. Tell me what it means.
Yeah.
And I was able to get a lot from just speaking. And I'm grateful that people were able to give me their time, because I know how precious time is. I don't have a lot of time. I manage a team and we've always got so much going on that I personally don't have that much time that I can give to people. So the fact that these people were generous enough with their time with me, I'm really grateful for.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. And that is good allyship. And that's also good for you in terms of being vulnerable or courageous enough to go and open up and ask for advice. Because sometimes you can work yourself into a bubble and feel like, I should know this. I don't want to ask this. This is embarrassing. So well done to you for doing that, because, you don't know it until you know it. It's as simple as that, and sometimes we're kind of hard on ourselves. So yeah, good on you for that. So what motivates you and what inspires you to keep going?
Just seeing, like, sounds really late, but we're really good. So whenever we do anything, I'm like, wow, that was great. And then I just want to do it again. So the motivation is just this cog that we just keep doing like really cool things. And I just think, wow, if we had more resource, if we had, be that people or time, whatever, that could be even bigger. That really inspires me. And then also, there's a lot of really bad marketing and a lot of really bad marketing professionals and influencer professionals that produce really rubbish things. I'm trying not to swear. Produce really rubbish things. And I see that and I'm like, wow, the fact that you got all of that sponsorship money to do that blows my mind, based just on who you know. I could do a much better job, and I will. And I get inspiration by seeing things being done at a level that I actually don't think is good enough. And then being like, got you, I will just do this better. And then that's it.
Amazing. I love that because you're essentially using your work to keep you going. And I love that. I think that's really good. That's good. What would you say is like what have you found most challenging so far in your journey?
All of it, in all honesty.
Yeah.
So the business side of the business is the hardest for me, for an array of reasons. But I studied languages at university, so I could probably run my business in Portuguese, but I still wouldn't be able to have got the finance side sorted. So I found all the operations, the processes, sorting accounts, all of that stuff, just at the beginning just went completely over my head, and I tried to ignore it as long as possible and outsource it, and then realized it needs to be a mixture of outsource and in-house hybrids to make it work. So in the last year, I've spent 2023 really honing in on our processes and our efficiency and the back end of the business, because from the front we look really glossy, but the back definitely didn't match up. So just understanding numbers and which numbers I'm supposed to be looking at, and just all the like minor details like HR policies and policies like maternity leave and all of this kind of stuff that I just kind of ignored for ages.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it just but now I'm like, okay, I'm excited by it. I understand it. I've spoken to the right people. We've created like really strong processes around it, and I'm feeling really really empowered that my business is hopefully by the end of this year in a place where it's on autopilot, and the back end stuff could just run itself. But that's taken nearly 5 years.
That's fair. You go through challenges, so that's one being one of them. Okay, well, thank you for sharing that. And obviously, you're now an employer, but with your employee hat on, what did you want from your employer? What made a good working environment for you? Or you can use your current setup if you want as an example of what makes a good environment for your employees.
I go for me, and that also is for my employees. So I am like neurodivergent, so I see the world in a slightly different way, and obviously work generally. And something that I've been really lucky to have, even before any diagnosis, is that I've had really flexible employers who have seen that if I'm given the room to thrive, or if I'm given the room to do things in my own way, I thrive. So be that timings, be that just space, be that learning, whatever it might be. If you give me enough time and nurturing, I will do whatever you want, the best it's ever been done. But I need to be given that, and I've been really, really lucky that I've always had that. Bar like 1 or 2 blip jobs that I left pretty quickly because they just didn't give me what I needed. But I think I knew quite early on the type of person that I was, and what I needed. So with my team, that's what I do. So I treat everyone as if they're an individual, because I'm very aware. So as an example, I work with my sister, and we are completely different people. How we absorb information, how it's retained, what we think is important in terms of business, everything is completely different. And I know that how I get taught something and how I can then do the job off the back of that is very different to how she would absorb that information. So I do that with my team. Everyone gets like quite a bespoke way of being dealt with, and I take time to figure out who they are based on their characteristics, what I think they're good at. Do they have like a diagnosed neurodiversity that I should be aware of?
Yeah.
Do I think they have an undiagnosed neurodiversity that I should be aware of? And then honing in on how I would, if so, like there's a couple of my team members I think if they were tested, may be dyslexic, as an example, traditional type of dyslexia, that is like the reading and spelling type. And so how I treat them is slightly different in terms of how I ask them to do things than other members of my staff, because I just know that the information is going to be absorbed differently. And that works really well. So we're a small team, so I'm able to do that. But as we get bigger, it's just making sure that we can figure out how to do that on scale. And that will be through HR and through management training and everything and leadership. But that works really well for us. And I'd like to think that my team feel really excited and empowered because they can do their job in a way that feels comfortable and they feel confident, rather than being like told to do something and having to just like figure it out. And then it takes them ages.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's good. It sounds like you've really put a lot of thought into making sure it's a good environment. And what does like good DEI look like to you? Or DEI, whichever way you want to flip it around.
Two sides. For me, it could either be natural to the company. So at 7-6, we're naturally inclusive, authentically diverse, simply because people came to us through different channels. We've got people that have come through uni schemes, we've got people that have come through internships, we've got people that have come through Indeed hiring, Instagram, random emails. I do a talk or a podcast recording and someone will listen and we'll get someone off the back of that. So we've done really well at hiring in lots of different entry levels, which is great. So there's that kind of just like natural diversity that comes from the founder or the core of the business. Or if you don't have that, it's that calculated diversity that you put the time in to create a strategy that really strives to be super inclusive. And then you make your like checkpoints to get there. And I'm not a huge fan of tick boxing, but at the same time, sometimes you've got to do it because if you just don't have what you need and you want to get there, then you need to figure out, right, what kind of people do we need to hire? Let's get them in. But then once they're in, how do we keep them? How do we make them want to stay and be engaged and be part of this team? How do we just become the best? And there's two ways to be, I think, and both of them take work. But some of them are more natural than others. But that doesn't mean that it's just because it's an unnatural way of being, it doesn't mean it's bad.
Yeah, no, I get that. No, thank you for sharing that. And I agree. Moving into your proudest moments, can you tell us about your proudest moment? It could be work, personal, it could be a career highlight.
Proudest moment, I think this year we won Boutique Influencer Marketing Agency of the Year at the Be Creator Awards. Thank you. And I was really proud of that. And I messaged my sister, who I run the business with, was on holiday at the time. And I messaged her and I was like, we won. And we had this moment where we were like, wow, we've put a lot of work in. So to be recognized by our industry, and we got a really beautiful bit of feedback from the judges, and to be recognized made us just feel like we just sat there, like we both did the sigh of relief of like, the work isn't for nothing. So that was a really, really proud moment for me. And then also last week we had a team meeting where I brought my entire team together and we did a workshop about our brand identity and like who we are as a business, because we're doing some kind of AI stuff and we needed to put everything into AI. So I was like, it's a great opportunity for us to like really hone in on the message. And I sat back and I just looked around and I actually had tears in my eyes, because every single person that I've employed gets this business so well, and they live and breathe it. And I just sat there and thought, wow, it took some time, we put the work in, but they're all doing really, really well. So things like that really excite me. And then also separate to that, looking at previous team members who to this day I still interact with a lot of them. And like I went out for lunch with one of them, an old employee last week, and then we've got like a Christmas party that we're organising with some old employees next week. And I just see what they're doing, and I'm so happy, because at the beginning, the people that came to me were young Black girls. So the fact that I'm seeing, and a lot of, I don't know how and why, just it was, but the majority of the girls that we hired at the beginning, just through circumstance, but also darker skin toned young Black women who are not always seen in our industry. And to see them all going to some really incredible companies and now making like great money, being really important parts of these teams, I'm like, wow, like
that's great.
The impact, even if it's this is just talking about like 5 different women, but that's 5 that we didn't have before.
Yeah, exactly that. So that's something to be very proud of. So I think that's really good. That's lovely. That's lovely. And what are your thoughts, would you say, about how the industry will evolve over the next few years?
How will the industry evolve?
Yeah, because I feel like there's lots going on with it evolving. Like you've got AI. AI is going to be massive. I feel like that's going to impact our industry. And then you've got things like DEI, which I feel is kind of dwindling a bit, but again, there's things that are changing. So what do you think?
I don't know. I think this is definitely something I need to sit down over Christmas and have a think about. I'm very much in the now and I need to think about the future. But I just think as an industry, we're going to get more, it's just going to become more professional, but more community focused.
Okay.
So we're really going to focus on different ways to calculate return on investment, different ways to work with creators and people of influence and what we're going to get from them. And then also we're going to see a lot of people's communities being tapped into and monetized, and probably some really exciting things off the back of that.
Yeah, I can see that. Definitely with the community engagement, definitely. I think that's good. That's a good gem there, definitely. Okay, so what key lessons would you say you've learned throughout your career? Maybe, 2 or 3 key lessons you've learned throughout your career.
Key lessons, I would say network, find your people. So your allies, your confidants, the people that you can speak to and bounce ideas off of and feel confident that they've got your back. And also dream big. Like, don't put yourself in a little box, don't pigeonhole yourself. If you want to do something, go and do it, because you're probably going to do it better than someone else. So even if it already exists and you think you can do a better job, try and do that, or try and collaborate with the people that have already done it to help them do better. So we have a pricing report that we post every year.
That. I always look at that. I love that. It's a good report.
We're actually about to start sorting out February's one, the update. But it takes a lot of work to do that, and we are the only people in the industry that have done that.
I haven't seen anything else. Whenever I've looked at it, I've always found you guys that have that report, because they've got this sector cornered off. You lot do it, and you do it basing it on those who are of color versus those who are not. And that's when I started to see the real discrepancy. When I looked at your pricing report, I was like, oh wow, like how is that person getting paid this for a post? Yeah. That I was like, wow, really interesting report that is.
Thank you. So the first one was all about understanding diversity pay gaps. Mainly that one was around ethnicity. And then the second one we did as a collaboration, which was around a wider sense of diversity, and we looked into disability and age. And that was really eye-opening. And then the third one was an update on pricing. And it had no talk around kind of D&I, because we didn't need to. The numbers are there. We know what the set is. So, but as time goes on, we'll constantly be refreshing. But every year we'll just update the reports to make sure that the numbers are in line with what people are charging across the board. And if someone went and tried to do a pay gap report, I'd be like, but why? And actually, the collaboration one that we did in 2022, that was what happened. MSL wanted to do a pay gap report, didn't know ours existed, even though we were the only ones in the space that did it. And then through conversation, it came up that they were doing one, and I was like, well, we already do that, so we should collaborate. And then we did. So it's not a case of going at it alone. I think if someone was to try and do a report off the back of us doing it, I'd probably be a bit angry. But if someone said, I want to collaborate with you on your next report, which we do constantly, we've got a new report coming out in January. That's in collaboration with another agency, and then another one coming out at the end of this month. Are we in December? Maybe when this comes out. At the end of this month, which will, and again, is in collaboration with another agency. Collaboration is king. So I think, or queen in our sense, because we're ladies. But I think it's really important to work with people. You might be able to do it well, but like, don't try and take someone else's idea.
Yeah, I agree with you.
That's like caveat that.
Fair play, fair play. And what advice would you give to young people of colour considering entering the industry?
Join us. Come. Just be really aware of what you're signing up for, and note that small businesses are a really good place for you to start. If you want a bit of a sense of safety sometimes. And there are lots of incredible agencies and brands out there that have inclusive structures already put in place. But sorry, my phone's ringing. But big agencies will probably be your better jumping point. So do with that information what you will, but just know that there are lots of places that you can go for support if you're not getting it within the business that you're working in. For example, MIFA, who have a mentorship program specifically for people of colour in the advertising industry. You've got networking groups like UK Black Comms Network, which is great just to meet people in the space and build your network up and make friends. There's lots of places that you can go for that support. So no, if you're not getting it in your business, then you can probably get it outside.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's that advertising one called again?
MIFA, MEFA. I can't remember what it stands for, but Media for All. That's what it stands for.
Good. Okay, well that's good. That's good. I never heard that one. That's brilliant.
They're brilliant.
Thank you. And getting into our last section, which is just about mindset. So how do you deal with the internal mind war? How do you manage self-limiting beliefs?
I don't really have time to have them. So when I have them, I normally talk them through with my sister or my husband, who will then tell me all the things that basically debunk any of the thoughts that, or lies that I'm telling myself, based on real life data showcasing that none of that is true because X, Y, and Z has been done. So again, it's really focusing on having a strong support network around you.
Yeah, again, I agree with you on having a strong support network. And looking back over your journey, would you do it all over again?
I would. I think about this a lot. I would, but I'd do it differently. And I would, I'd just do everything a bit different. I'd study a different degree. I would maybe do 7/6 as a side hustle before I did it as a main gig, just so that I didn't get myself into a bit of debt when I was starting off, which made everything a bit harder, because whenever money gets involved, things are harder. So I'll just do things to make my life a little bit easier. But the journey that I've had has been so educational that I also think that if I didn't do it in the way that I've done it, then the company wouldn't be as good as it is. So maybe sometimes your struggle is your like achievement.
Yeah, absolutely. And what would you say is the worst and the best advice you've been given?
I don't know. Worst advice. I got some advice last year from an agency that basically tried to dim my light.
Yeah.
And the advice was around just kind of like, maybe I should kind of give up kind of thing, on like the creator side, because I still do content creation every now and again. Kind of like, maybe you're not like that great. And to be honest, I don't do content creation very often. And I'm not that great in comparison to a lot of creators. But the stuff I talk about is mainly business focused things. So whenever I do an ad, it's actually quite important stuff. Like I'll do something with like BT, and they'll be talking about like free marketing services that small businesses can get. Like that's the kind of stuff that I really want to share with my community. Or do something with a bank. It's always like a free opportunity for a small business.
Yeah.
So I'm always just like really keen to do that kind of stuff. And I guess they didn't quite see they didn't see what was going on in the background of like what was going on with my mindset, but then also they just didn't think I was as good as maybe I think I am. So they didn't rate me in the same way. So that advice I did not take.
Bad advice. Yeah. I'm glad you did take that.
Yeah, it did. They did make me feel quite bad though at the time. And then the best piece of advice, I've had so many gems. It's really difficult to narrow it down. But my friend Sarah from she's founder of Cork Studio, she gave me some advice last Christmas and said, we as an agency, we're the first of our kind in the space. There's no one doing what we do, and I really need to tap into that messaging. And I was quite humble. I'm just like, oh, I don't care, whatever. But then this year we've just started our marketing. We didn't really do marketing before. We were quite lucky to get a lot of word of mouth work. So we didn't really do that much, but we've just changed up our marketing strategy, and we've started to put social media as like a important part of our strategy, which you'd think as a social media focused agency that would be
people. I get it. When you do it for other people, you always so I kind of get it.
That it's thank you for getting that, because I've been like, we do so much on social. I do so much consultancy with small businesses, large businesses, and freelancers, founders, and I help them build up their social. But then I look at mine and I look at 7Sixes and I'm like, we're not that great, but it's because we're doing everyone else's. But we've started doing our thing basically and really honing into that message. And it's the amount of work we're getting off the back of it is just really exciting. And she gave me that insight of just like own the space that you've created for yourself. Don't be humble about it. Be explicit that you were, the first to do these things. Because if I don't say it, then someone else will try and take it.
Oh yeah, I was going to say that someone else will definitely say it. So yeah, good. That's good advice. I think that's really good advice, and definitely glad that she told you that as well. I think that's really good advice. And my last question for you is, do you have any rules that you've implemented to help you along your career journey?
I ask lots of questions. So always ask questions is like my big rule in life. I take time out to really understand what's going on. I take time out to rest, which is a new thing that I've done in the last year. Because when my mind is always on work, but when I have a bit of time where I'm not actually physically doing work, I do better work. So making sure I input, like I've used all of my holiday entitlement this year, and it blows my mind that other people haven't, because I'm like, when are you resting? But yeah, those are two really big things. Constantly asking questions and being unapologetic about the question that I'm asking as well. Because before I'd be embarrassed, but now I'm just like, I need to feed my team. Like if I'm not doing well, then that's 6 people's rent and mortgages that aren't being paid, and
no, I get it. Well, that's really good. I think that's really good, and thank you so much for taking your time to be with me today. I really appreciate you spending time and sharing your experiences. It's been really lovely speaking with you, Charlotte. Now, can you tell our listeners, or anyone who's watching, where they can connect with you?
Yeah, so thank you so much. You can find me personally on every platform really. I don't really use Twitter, that being said, or X. But as Charlotte 76, so the letters SEVENSIX. Or for the company, you can find us at 76agency.com or 76 Agency across all social media platforms.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. It's been so nice speaking with you. I hope you've enjoyed sharing a bit about you with us. So it's been really interesting to hear your side and your experiences. And of course, we will be back with some more wonderful people from the world of comms very soon. Until then, stay tuned, guys, and be safe, and bye for now.